or good afternoon, because I know some of you are in daytime rather than evening time. It's lovely, lovely. Tonight we have przemek walczak from one of my favorite gardens. I get into deep water if I say my favorite American garden, Chanticleer. It is just absolutely magical, and if you have never been, you must go. It's just one of those places. It's absolutely beautiful. And tonight we're gonna learn about, well, Poland meets America in the shade, I think, Przemek, is that right? A shady discussion
Pretty
about
much. Yes.
Poland meets America, and it's all a bit shady, which sounds interesting and intriguing.
Right.
So it's lovely to have you, and I know we're really thankful that you said you do it this week, because I know you're all gearing up for the big opening of the season, which is the beginning of next week, I think. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Yep. So it's all hands to the deck, and I'm sure you're all very, very busy. So thank you very much for saying you do this. Would you like to go into screen share and get going? Because I think your talk is sort of introduces who you are and your story, doesn't it?
Yes. Okay, let me go to the screen here.
Lovely. Lovely. Looking good.
All right.
Yep.
So
Great.
we'll call this talk the Gardening in the Shade Lessons from Poland and the US. I grew up in Poland, relatively new to the US. I've lived here since 1994. And growing up and learning most of what I knew about horticulture there, it was first the forests in Poland were my basically daycare. So spending lots of time there with my grandfather, and often by myself, probably at a little too young age. I think most parents would be horrified to hear that I was like 5 when you run to the woods by yourself. And somehow survived it and learned some plants and learned to appreciate them. And it's supposedly experiences at that age, 5, 6 years, kind of set you preferences for things for the future. So the landscapes and the gardens that people like in their later life, often refer to that period. So mosses and mushrooms, and the forest floor was my playing ground, and it still is. So I think it was a natural transition. In between there, I was an arborist for quite a while. And then my take on it is that I evolved and came down from the tree, and I'm on the ground now. So, and very happy there. So let's see. I grew up on the coast of Poland. The whole northern border of Poland is the Baltic Sea. So I was sort of in the west part of Poland. Warsaw University of Life Sciences was my alma mater. I studied agriculture there, but learned as much as I could about plants. I mean, Warsaw Botanical Garden was my playground, and I would go there just to look at plants. And some of them I still remember from those excursions. After college, I worked for the Center for the Preservation of Historic Landscapes, and you could see how closely we were with nature. We were pretty much one with it. That's our logo there. My kids are half Polish and take a lot of lessons from Poland, and know to the plants and how do they grow both in Poland and in the US. It's definitely way different, or somewhat different plant palette, and definitely different growing conditions. This is just to orient ourselves. Poland lays from between 49 and 54, roughly, latitude, sorry. And you can see we overlap quite a bit with the UK. However, where I garden now, it's just east of Philadelphia and in Pennsylvania. And that's pretty much right on 40 northern latitude. And that has a lot to do with both with the hardiness zones, plant hardiness zones, but also the day length. Being so much farther south, the day length is quite a bit different than in Poland. And when I first got here, it was really surprising to me how short the days are here in the winter, where sometimes I forget to go to bed in Poland because it was so bright outside. So Pennsylvania, Chanticleer, also my favorite garden is right about there, and then looking closer. So that's about halfway between Washington, D.C., the capital, and the New York City, and so Philadelphia somewhere around there. And now the plant hardiness zones in Poland. Supposedly they match pretty closely to the to where I garden here, and in reality, between the day length and some of the extremes of the temperatures, it's not quite the same. And Poland being kind of smallish country, it's has quite a bit of different influences on the climate. The whole eastern border, that's a continental climate, influence from the Eurasian steppes. The western border, that's some of the Atlantic Ocean influences, and then the northwestern, northeastern corner, excuse me, that's the coldest, and that's some of the subpolar air coming down from the north. So with all these influences colliding, the weather can be very variable from day to day, and sometimes it's nice, often not that great. Some of my influences that I try to go by, as this is the Polish version. The translation is mine, so it's maybe not the best poetically, but it gets the message across. Basically, it refers to the gardens as being our we came from, and we need to take care of them. Tom Coward, the head gardener at Gravetide, I try to live that and walk that fine line, leaning more towards the wild garden, less towards the big mess. Soil, the most important resource when we do, is very important and could give us a lot of grief or lots of rewards. So this is quick blurb on Chanticleer. Chanticleer is a former private estate. It's about 50 acres total. 36 of that are open to the public, which that's 14.5 hectares, hectare inclined. We are in the suburbs, basically, of Philadelphia. It was a former estate of the Rosengarten family, and it was left into the trust and the Chanticleer Foundation to maintain it as a garden and leave it open to the public. It's a pleasure garden, so our main objective is to maintain a beautiful garden, but also education and the main things. Shade gardening. Big part of Chanticleer is wooded, so Bell's Woods is the native plant garden. There's wooded areas running along the creek, and then the Asian woods, which is predominantly Asian herbaceous and understory with the native overstory, and also smaller sections, Minder Woods, that's near the ruined garden, and nooks and crannies where shade gardening happens. So this is again quick notes on Chanticleer. This is our entrance where we greet the visitors, very friendly to the visitors. And just to point out, shade gardening doesn't necessarily have to be a woodland gardening. So this lovely pair of Katsura trees, that's a Pseudophyllum japonicum, it's a dioecious, so that's a boy and a girl. And for a long time, this was all lawn underneath. Now it's not. And two reasons for that is we don't want people to walking on the root zone, and also it's too shady to grow grass there. So trunk covers and bulbs in there. Near the houses, We maintain pretty exuberant subtropical gardens, both in the ground and in containers. And sometimes that creates shade. So I'll go over a few examples of man-made shade, where it starts as a sunny areas with tree planting. Buildings influence that too. So one example is the courtyard at the main house at Chanticleer. When I first saw it in 1995, this was full sun, really hot. The accolade cherries here were maybe 10 feet tall, like 3 meters, and this was all sunny plantings. Right now, it's all hydrangeas and hellebores, because that's all grow there. So we are grown. So this is same area later in the fall, understory of hellebores and hydrangeas at all. This is an example from a Swarthmore College. This is the Scott Arboretum. It's the campus of the college. An array of metasequoias between two buildings. It was very sunny before. I remember those metasequoias again being much smaller 25 years ago, and now it's a fully shaded alley and between the buildings and the trees. In the fall, various plantings, including the anemone sylvestris, spring with the galanthus, and the fall. Another garden within the campus of Swarthmore College. This was designed originally as a shade garden, but when it was newly constructed, the hardscape and the trees planted, the shade plants were suffering, and now, quite a bit later, it's a thriving shade garden with Gilearia japonica in the middle there. Back to Chanticleer, this is the ruined garden. That's where our founder used to live, and now most of the plants in this corner are woodland plants. You can hear probably under there are some lovely shade plants that we desire, but especially in the US, that sometimes might be not a good idea to procure them. It is legal to harvest plants for the wild with permits, and if you follow the guidelines, and there's places that call themselves nurseries that do that. That's all they do is resell wild collected plants, and it's somewhat frowned upon because they harvesting or collecting practices are not always followed, and could cause damage to the native natural woodlands. This is an example of Goodyear pubescens. It's a native orchid. There's several species of them, but this is Goodyear pubescens. This is a natural standing in central Pennsylvania, and they're somewhat difficult to grow, and it's very hard to find them that are actually nursery grown and not wild collected. And with the additional trouble of being finicky, maybe we should leave them alone. And that applied to many other trilliums and other natives. Yes, we're gonna go over a couple plantings that completed over the years and how they behave. This is a rather high shade area with originally it was basically damaged lawn and giant shrubs and the tall canopy of trees. Eventually, when it became more manicured, so to speak, it's predominantly a native planting, and in early spring you see all the different layers coming up. Asarum canadensis back there, the native wild ginger, with the Christmas fern Polystichum acrosticoides coming through it. Ely fronds of Adiantum pedatum, one of the more beautiful and my favorite native plants. Low planting of Phlox subulata, Phlox stolonifera, Sherwood purple, Camassia, Liclinia, blue Danube. It's just budding up. And then ostrich ferns background, and then Tulipa clusiana cynthia. And as they open, the whole vignette changes quite a bit. You can see the asarum quite a bit better. And then an addition of Mertensia virginica, our native bluebells, which are very much ephemeral, and all this dense foliage and the spray of blue flowers that would disappear by the end of June. It's completely gone. And then the ferns and the sarum and the solidagos take over. And again, through the day, the tulips go through different phases from the tight bud to fully open. And it's a lovely, as one of the species tulips, it's naturalizes great here and does very well. Here, again, Tulipa clusiana cynthia with Trillium grandiflorum. That's one of the nicest trilliums that we grow here, with underplanting of actually anemone apennina, and I'll venture a little bit more into anemones later. Trillium grandiflorum, as it opens pure white, and as it gets pollinated, it fades through pink, and then eventually start to senesce from there. Different trilliums, Trillium recurvatum, the prairie trillium, and Delphinium tricorna. I grew up with delphiniums, loved them, the perennial ones, and they were just fabulous. And I was perplexed when I got here how we're enamored by delphiniums and how difficult they are to grow. And that's going back to the heat hardiness. Our summers here are brutal, and they just suffer so much. They get fungal diseases. They're just not happy. Delphinium tricorna is one of the native ones, and it is the true ephemeral. As soon as they're done blooming, very shortly after they shut down, and they're gone for the rest of the season. But beautiful show in the spring. Not native Dicentra spectabilis. It's a hybrid, and not my favorite. So some darker hellebores mixed in there. Different views of the same planting. Trillium recurvatum is one of the ones that if there's enough of them and they pollinated, they would self-sow, and actually they multiply quite happily. Often what I do is dig them out and the seedlings and bulk them up, propagate in that way. Addition of Mertensia virginica here, the bluebells, and Stylophorum, and also Uvularia. This is a somewhat on purpose, somewhat accidentally, pretty complex plantings, and things fade in and out through the season, and not strictly native, and with the addition of some lilies and other things in there. And that was mixed in there just fine too. This is Alton Ha, one of my favorites, one of the bigger ones. Pondering life's persistent questions. I've had a hard time deciding which shade plants to focus on. Lovely native plant, Tiarella cordifolia. There is tons of cultivars. Some of the straight species and seed selections are some of my favorites. I think there's a little bit too much focus on coming up with two weird ones with more cut leaves, more purple, less purple, and less runny. So quite a bit of breeding happening there. There's definitely lots to choose from. Seed selection, Tiarella new medley, lovely one, very vigorous, and with quite a bit of the darker shading on it. Next to it, which looks like a Tiarella, but it's actually this is piggyback plant, which is that's escaping. Anyway,
is it Tolmea?
Tolmea Mathiese. Thank you. Thank you. This is the piggyback part where the new plantlets emerge at the corner of the leaf, and it could be propagated that way, but also gives it this kind of layered look, and there could be several layers of them showing up. This is more from the side again, and it's often held as a houseplant, and there are cultivars with golden leaves or golden speckling on them. This is native to the Pacific Northwest, but it's hardy here. Again, Tiarella with Styloforum, another native ephemeral. Tiarella not ephemeral, but persistent perennial throughout the year. Styloforum does this thing in the spring and then disappears. It could be a little rambunctious. It will self-sow and cute sometimes overwinter, so I might have to mention a little bit. Another view of Tiarellas with Styloforum. And then something that's both edible and ornamental. I'm not eating them because I'm just them. But this is Allium trichocum, or Rams is one other American common name. The other one is wild leeks. This is sort of an equivalent of the Allium ursinum in Europe, where unfortunately I've never seen the nice stands of it in Poland, but I know it grows there, and it is collected or what is it called? Foraged for culinary purposes. You can see a young seedling here. Allium trichocum produces foliage in the spring, very vibrant green, and this is a shot in the wild in the nature preserve. And the guidelines are such that when people forage, to take the leaves or one leaf per plant and leave the bulbs in the ground, and that way it would be sustainably collected in the wild. It's quite ornamental, and then the flowers come up later in the season, in July, August, and lovely here coming through the Asarum canadensis and some Solidago flexicalis. Not my picture, but this is in Poland in this southwestern section, and I might have to make a pilgrimage to see that. Absolutely lovely. With the emphasis of garden supporting the ecosystem, both pollinators and other creatures. I think every garden has a bug motel these days. There's some mixed feelings about them these days. We try to be as accommodating to the insects in our gardening, but we actually conducting a biodiversity study of the insects and other animals in the garden. Most of these man-made pollinator masonry bees houses, a lot of time is the invasive or not native bees that nest in them, and we're kind of surprised at that. And so our goal these days is to just provide natural nesting places for them instead of trying to artificially build them. We call this a habitat pile. Again, it's kind of mixed results. Sometimes we find the larval stages in the hollow stems. Best thing is to leave them standing. Again, that's a little bit of play on how we do that, aesthetics and the function of providing nesting materials. We're definitely changing our gardening practices in the woodlands. There's a big push, though. The catchphrase is "leave the leaves." Here we used to leave them, but we shred them, and that's definitely not a positive thing for some of the insects that overwinter in their larval stages, where a lot of them would stay in the litter, and that doesn't help them, both making them more visible or not covered, and basically physically they might get injured, try to shred them. Also that cutting the leaves, shredding them, speeds up the nutrient cycling, and they break down a lot faster. Pachysandra procumbens, one of the native ground covers, the foliage, the fallen foliage filters through the stems and leaves and does not affect them. Here's the Pachysandra procumbens blooming in the early spring, and the foliage. It's semi-evergreen, not like the Asian Pachysandra where it's truly evergreen. This one is depending on the severity of the winter. So leaving the leaves would get us results like that. This is a polyphemus moth. So our biodiversity study found over 400 species of moths so far in our area, so which is more than in the surrounding areas. Going to some of the spring ephemerals that we grow, Sanguinaria canadensis, the bloodroot emerges very tight and purple when it starts, and then eventually they unfurl. The flowers don't stay up for very long, but longer than some other ones. There is some attempts at selecting cultivars, so they're more floriferous and faster growing, that bulk up faster. This is not a cultivar, but definitely shows more pink than standard. Sanguinaria canadensis flora plana, the double one. Positive is that it blooms for probably 5 times longer than the straight species. Since it's sterile, the petals stay on the plant for much longer. Seems to be more vigorous. The foliage gets bigger as well. And perhaps if we add few of them to the garden, that will not impact the insects and things negatively. So lovely plant either way. Jeffersonia diphylla, this is our native Jeffersonia, dubia being the Asian one, the blue one. This one, it blooms so quickly that if you blink, you may miss the bloom. It's usually within 1 day, the petals fall off. It's lovely. It's kind of similar to Sanguinaria, but the foliage is also very interesting, and that persists for half of the summer. In the background here, that's Electrum thalictroides, formerly anemonella, one of the ephemeral thalictrums. That's the earliest of them. Excuse me, Haketia, that's how I learned it. I know there's some other pronunciation of it, and maybe even the name has changed, but that's actually European. I just learned that it's native to Poland and quite rare and endangered. So we have a few of them, and very early color showing up in the garden. Trilliums, fabulous. I mean, they only native to the US, and there's few Asian ones. Mostly East Coast, there's few on the West Coast of the US as well, but there's about 40 species of them. And new ones are being described continuously, and they're lovely plants, definitely, and worldwide. Again, sourcing could be problematic. Most of the nursery ones, nursery propagated ones are a little on the expensive side. There's some attempts of tissue culture, and they're definitely doable from seeds. It's just the lead way is quite long, supposedly up to 7 years from seed to bloom time. This is Trillium cuneatum, one of our most somewhat common, but still gorgeous. Trillium luteum, one of the bigger ones, and Trillium grandiflorum flora plana. Again, there's few cultivars of that one. There's some that are more pink than others, and the double one. The cheapest ones are coming from Japan. It's actually from Chicago nursery in Japan. Somehow they got the market cornered on both the Trillium grandiflorum, and most of the time, if you see the Sanguinaria canadensis flora plana in the trade, it came from Japan. Trillium recurvatum, I mentioned it earlier, here with also Thalictrum thalictroides and Cystoptes bulbifera, the little fern coming out there. Again, the same combo, Theorella with Stylophorum dodecatium, now called Primula media, dodecatium media, so most people still call it a shooting star. very early ephemeral. The foliage is already up. The flowering stem will follow soon. Martensia in an early stage with more purple in the foliage. When the foliage first emerges of Martensia, it's truly purple, but very, very lovely. And they will self-sow and increase by running, and gorgeous, gorgeous native ephemeral. The Thlinium tricorna again. And there's a shot of sedum tornatum, one of the few sedums that actually prefers to be in the shade. So this is a woodland species. Success. Big expanses of Martensia with Stylophorum and trilliums and other things. Eventually, Spagilia will come through it, which a little later. This is again this in quotation man-made shade. When these trees were originally planted, this was all grass, and eventually grass wouldn't grow there. So I installed those beds probably 15 years ago, and they're only get more blue over time. Adonis amarensis, not native. It will grow almost anywhere. One of the earliest spring ephemerals showing up. And this is winter aconite with the big patches of Adonis amarensis. This is winter to the March bank. And this is woodland gardening on a large scale. The sequence of the yellows, which follow with Scylla, and this whole area that's yellow will become blue, followed by Anemone Apennina, and then Martensia. Couldn't talk about shade gardening without some of our least favorite rather, invasives. And the kicker here is that I grew up with some of those plants, and they were native in woods in Poland, and that's where they belonged. Here, whether brought on purpose or accidentally, they cause terrible trouble. This is Bell's Woods, and the reason I'm showing this picture, because all the leaf cover here, that used to be bright green from Ranunculus. It used to be Ranunculus vicaria. No, these days it's Vicaria verna, the lesser celandine. Top of my list. And garlic mustard and other, most of these are herbaceous, but Euonymus alatus, the burning bush, very popular with suburban landscapes, and in suburban landscapes, terrible woodland invasive, and it's causing a lot of trouble. I had to kill a lot of it before I could start gardening in Bell's Woods. A lot of these plants follow disturbed areas like railroad tracks, road banks, and such. A couple woodies here, Devil's walking stick, very, very invasive here, and the woody vine, the Celastrus orbiculatus, and still not as invasive in Poland, and considered an ornamental vine. Pachysandra terminal is clearly a cultivated plant, but displaces a lot of natives which planted in private properties in big suites. Easy to grow, hard on the environment. So there are helix, native in Poland, lovely plant, protected when it starts blooming, because the juvenile period for that plant is 50 years. So once it reaches maturity, it's protected by law. But here it grows terribly fast. I think it reaches the reproductive maturity much faster here. And the birds spread the seeds, and it causes a lot of trouble. Quick overview. This is how a lot of it's where I used to garden look like. So fortunately, the most effective way to control it is use of herbicides, and then weeding after that. And I know you guys probably know all about it, how successful this in spreading around. So all these bulblets break off and then roll down a hill or get carried by water. All the flat plains around here are green and yellow with Vicaria verna here. And most people pulling their hair trying to figure out how to get rid of it. Annual weeds, still grass, and not that hard to control, but persistent and prevalent. Garlic mustard, again, you want to mucilatus. Most of these sources were taken from, source for these pamphlets were from universities or extensions of agricultural offices. And look at that note, useful in almost all settings. It's terrible. It's getting outlawed in a lot of places, including Pennsylvania. Now it's become illegal to sell it by the nurseries. Hedera helix, the English ivy, here at Chanticleer, we still have some patches that need to go. This is in Warsaw, in Łazienki Park, and it's lovely. Not a native bird, but it belongs here, and it's fine, but not for us. Pachysandra terminalis, again, very successful and easy to use plant for the lazy people, but environmentally not that great. And I'm working on removing that. So you see the bank, I'm pushing it back. So as I pull it, I replace it and with predominantly native species. And you see there was the part where it headed in quite a bit of area. Same area a little later, so that this was one of the part shade projects. And Dodecathion media, one of my favorite string ephemerals. This is the white version. It goes from white to magenta and everything in between, lavender colors. And now being called Primula, it's Primula media with Primula japonica. And we try to keep the Primula japonica under control. It's hard to not in this way. The Dodecathion media in the woods does mixing with the Primula just fine. And again, by the end of June, the foliage is completely gone, like it was never there. And it mixes almost in any combination. This is with Trillium grandiflorum, some Dentaria, or no, it's Cardamine diphylla underneath there, and Triostrum aurantiacum, which wild coffee is one of the common names here. And normally it's green. This is a purple leaf version, and that goes away with the season. And later the stems are surrounded by this lovely yellow-orange berries that persist to the end of the season. One of our native salvias that actually will grow in the woods and in moist meadows and in the open as well. In the woods, the flowers wouldn't have as much of the blue tinge to it. It will go paler towards white, but lovely native Middle East salvia, underused. Used to be Melantium virginicum. This is Veritium virginicum, and even if it's not blooming, it has a lovely stature here just before it opens. It will bloom from the woods from full shade to full sun. It would be a little bit more floriferous in the more sun, but again, underused, and I think seeds are available. And lovely in the mass, especially. Here, the Datisca cannabina drooping over it. And even after it finishes blooming, first the green stems and the seed heads are still ornamental, and even as they turn brown, and they'll persist into there. A lot of the ephemeral anemones are lovely in shade and woodland gardening. This is Apenina. Again, mostly what you find in the trade is the cultivars, whether white or dark blue. This is stand that's seed propagated. So the seeds actually got from winter tour, and it will go from white to different shades of blue all the way to pretty dark. And beautiful in the early spring, then it does not cause trouble to other things. I mix it with Tiarellas and other natives, and it goes away and after the beautiful show. So easy to propagate from seeds and from divisions. And here again, mixed with Martensias and Styloforums and Stella. Anemone lipsiensis, gorgeous, and from Europe, and same thing. It doesn't cause trouble but lovely in the spring. I grew up with this plant. That's anemone nemorosa, the native woodland anemone in Poland, and absolutely gorgeous. Used in landscape parks, and I've just used to run into it in the woods. This is Bell's Woodland at Chanticleer. In the circle here, that's predominantly Trillium grandiflorum, and again, at the time, I didn't know it was probably wild collected. The nursery that sold it to me promised it was not, that it was nursery grown. And so the white cloud of the Trillium slowly gets replaced with other, as the Trilliums fade into, you see the Trillium grandiflorum here, they turn pink. There's a straight Trillium luteum, and the next wave of plants that coming up, emerging here is Spagilia marylandica, lovely native with beautiful foliage and gorgeous flowers, very unusual, and who persist and through the whole season, doesn't have any pests that I know of, and here in full bloom. And there are some attempts of coming up with cultivars. They're more floriferous, and they're shorter, darker. There's definitely natural tendencies. Most of them are yellow. The inside of the petals are yellow. This is chartreuse. I prefer these guys. Before it opens, it's lovely. And so the big bloom happens in June, but then it will do sporadic reblooms. There'll be secondary flowering stems coming out. So not as red cloud as here, but still lovely. Then here after bloom, I stand of foliage. Moss. I know everybody has some moss experiences. I mean, I mentioned earlier playing with moss when I was a kid, and I'll try to play with moss as much as I can. This is an deliberately planted moss mound. There's a lot of books on moss gardening, and usually experience they somewhat local to where the author lives, and not necessarily translate easily to other places. And so I came up with my own way of moss gardening. There's definitely two kind of pioneering mosses, Physidens and Plagionium, that are the easiest to transplant, and they will set the stage for other mosses to come in. And here I wanted the moss mound, so this is clay and sand-based the substrate, and that low organic matter would maintain the shape of it. And working with what you've got. So this was, again, the man-made shade, the accolade cherry, and there's also over the side here, Magnolia Elizabeth, which is a big magnolia. We don't know really how big it will get, because one of the parents is Magnolia acuminata, which is a canopy tree that could reach 120 feet or close to 40 meters. So, well, anyway, we got shade where there was grass before. Grass wouldn't grow here, and moss started on its own. The being on a slope, the flare of the cherry protected the moss from being washed away, and so I favored the moss, removed the competition, which was daffodils that didn't perform as well in the shade. And on the perimeter, this is hellebores and epimediums, and get rid of the competition. Here in the early stages, you see the daffodils. The ones out there are blooming. These guys, between the shade and being overcrowded, then were not performing anymore. So they went away, and now we have a moss patch, and lovely through all seasons. And the surrounding plants, the hellebores and the epimediums. This is Epimedium grandiflorum lilify, the purple one, and the Yanamoto is and early in the morning and in the afternoon, it gets the low sun rays, and it's just fabulous. This is close to the fall. You can see the fall color in the background. And I mentioned Plagiomnium. This is most of it was this, and then you could see the down low here. This is Achocarpic mosses. The more upright ones came in later. This is another patch, but similar situation. Plagiomnium and then Atrachium coming in and kind of taking over. This is the Bauer garden, private garden in central Pennsylvania. They cut out some of this sculptural wall. Somebody used, or the owners used it to make a pattern in the ground and interplanted with mosses. And again, they definitely wanted to play with mosses. Nobody planted this moss. This is a shed, tool shed. Mosses just happened on their own with the mixed with some lichens. Ferns, you couldn't do really shade without ferns. Again, one of my favorite group of plants. This is a table for our interns for their fern class. And both native and not native ferns mixed lovely with pretty much anything. Here with Mertensia, this is Dreopteris crassorhizoma, one of my favorite kind of a specimen fern. The Dreopteris erythrosora brillians as a ground cover for this beech tree that again outcompeted the grass, but ferns perform very nicely. And sometimes we'll plant lilies in coming through them. Beautiful fern that's native both to the US and Europe. Gymnocarpium Dryopteris. It is native to Poland. It's the oak firmus, the common name. It's very little. It's maybe like 20, 25 centimeters high, maybe a little less, and with ebony colored stems and very pretty. Here actually in a container with mosses and liverworts. Osmunda cinnamomea, the cinnamon fern. That's where the name comes from, the color of the fertile fronds. Once they complete their life cycle, they just fall off and disappear. So the cinnamon part is kind of ephemeral. Here, underplanted with Asarum europaeum, the lovely native to Poland and I think most of Europe ground cover. And there's an interesting story with the Phyllitis scolopendrum, or the old name was Asplenium scolopendrum, the hard-tongue fern. This is the size of the full frond from last year. There's the same species both in Poland and in the US, but one is tetraploid and one is diploid, just like the standard set of chromosomes. And the American one is just lacks vigor and it's very hard to grow. So it is in a native woods, but this is the European. It grows way better, and that's all you can find in the trade, really. Ostrich fern, lovely. It could be trouble. So here with the Hydrangea quercifolia, fertile fronds. Normally the sterile fronds will be still green, but this was in a dry area. So and lovely even in the winter, and we collect them, and sometimes we use them for marking the bulb beds or just marking things in general. Here, delineating the bulb beds here with Camassia in the spring. Christmas fern, Polystichum acrosticoides, excellent. The name comes from them being semi-evergreen, so they will last till Christmas and they'll use for Christmas decoration. Excellent, very interesting group of ferns. The Botrychium genus, possible to propagate. Nobody has them in the trade from being spore propagated. The life cycle is such that I think nobody has figured out how to do it yet. The common name is rattlesnake fern because the unfurling fertile part of the frond resembles the. Here, Cystopteris bulbifera, one of the live-bearing ferns. So under the leaves, there will be little plantlets that are forming there, and mix here with the Phlox stolonifera with purple. So after the phlox is done blooming, the foliage would still grow just fine, but the ferns will come up above it and form sort of overs. Again, by continental fern, this is Munda regalis, the royal fern. In the early spring, when the fronds unfold, they have this bronzy, coppery color, or bronzy white, and then before the fronds fully unfurl. Again, on both sides of the Atlantic. I showed some pictures of the Adiantum pedatum here, early stages of the ferns unfurling, here fully expanded. And again, it mixes with everything beautifully, lovely. In mass, mixed with other things. There's some cultivars that who needs cultivars? They look this lovely. They're my favorites. I love all these plants, but there's few that are underutilized, and I think could be used in the woodland settings much more often and with success. So this is Salini stellata. It is a native woodland plant here and grows around here. This available in the trade and lovely. It could grow from sunny areas to full shade. Here, another plant with the woodland grass. This is Diorama americana. Beautiful, beautiful native grass, and it could grow in wet shade, but also tolerate other conditions, and it maintains this lovely sheen on it throughout the whole season. Not native, but gorgeous. Eracima sicocianum. There's tons of them. People have their favorites. This one, I think, it's especially handsome with Tiarella cordifolia, which is not quite open yet, and they play off of each other. That white, lovely native plant. Very few people know it, and this is Valeriana passiflora. Early in the spring, these rosettes. It's like one of the first plants that start growing, one of the last that stops, and blooms at about 60 centimeters, 2 feet, maybe a little higher. And this is spring, and then for the rest of the season, it's here bigger clumps of Diorama americana and the Valeriana in between. I mentioned Sedum tornatum earlier. This is it in the woods on a very thin layer of soil of the rock, in the cracks, in mounds that I put up in the woods with Tiarella behind it. It looks like snow in when it's in full bloom. Very underutilized. This is one of the natives, kind of wetland plants, but it doesn't have to grow in the wetlands. This is Napia dioica with this cap leaf, big foliage that kind of tropical looking. Flowers are nice as well up close, and then the foliage in the shade it will be much looser, but it can grow in full shade here, coming up above the ostrich fern. Some of the late season, I mean, it's easy to grow the ephemerals and other early season things in the woods. Color later is much harder. So this is a Asarum europaeum mixed with fall blooming crocus. This is Crocus speciosus, which the foliage did its energy gathering in the spring, and now it's rewarding us with this lovely flash of bloom. But for us, it's really late. It's like October, the end of October. Rhabdosia, it went to many different names. This is from South Africa, but it's hardy for us. And again, late in the season, it provides this spill of beautiful blue flowers. There's a white cultivar as well. So this is Rhabdosia longituba. I don't know what's the common name right now. I mean, what the name right now is. It went through from Rhabdosia to Plectranthus, and I think it might be Isodon. Anyway, that's Solidagos. There's tons of different species. Some are more weedy than others. There's a couple that are lovely in the woods and will perform in full shade. So this is Solidago flexicalis, and like I said, blooms great in the woods, not terribly aggressive. Another one is Solidago cecia, or some people say cassia. This is zigzag Solidago with the narrow foliage. Again, it would go from the wood's edge all the way to the full shade. I couldn't garden without clematis. So most of them I think as clematis as a full sun plant. They can take part shade or high shade and be very interesting. I like to grow them on shrubs and maybe fences, make some supporting structures, preferably on shrubs. And you see the other one was not native. And this is a Diorna group, and there's still a lot of research and selection happening with the native clematis here in the US. This is Clematis diorna. It's called Diorna group now. Some people think about splitting like 12 different species. Gravestye Beauty, selected and named after the Gravestye Manor. Raguchi, another. This is a Glaucophila, gorgeous. It blooms for up to 3 months. It'll continuously produce new stems, new foliage, and keep blooming. Here on climbing on Cereus atlantica glauca. Even the seed heads later look great. They look like sea creatures. One of the techniques that I apply in the woods is hugelkultur, and I'll just speak on it briefly. It allows me to add or topography into the woods without changing how much without smothering the tree roots. I mean, so these are more airy and I'll just pile soil like that. It brings the carbon, the forest floor. The standard procedure was to remove all the wood and clean it. With our biological, with their biodiversity study, we found out that Bell's woods were, I did the hugelkultur and left some logs laying around. There was a lot of terrestrial beetles. Other parts of the garden, Asian woods, there were none. And because of that, they need decomposing wood to complete their life cycles. As wood breaks down, it improves and builds up soil. Soils were pretty depleted and compacted and needed this sort of help digging. So this is the theory. This is an Austrian guy that invented it. And hugelkultur normally is used mostly for growing food. So in permaculture, food, I mean, wood as being source of nitrogen and carbon. That's like a somewhat slow release fertilizer. You can eat exactly what sort of mineral composition you need to grow certain vegetables. For me, it's a soil restoration project. I mean, technique, and like I said, adding to the topography. Most of the woodlands in our area are basically post-agricultural, so the forest floor looks flat with trees sticking out of it. Natural old woodland would have fallen trees, so there'll be divots in the ground and mounds of soil from the root masses that tipped over, and there'll be this unevenness. So vernal pools in the hollows where the trees were, that's habitat for amphibians and such. And so basically it's mimicking the natural woodland situation, leaving all the wood behind and letting it decompose in place. So I don't know if that's proper hugelkultur, but that's not what we're going for in the woods. Also, leaving as much as of the trunk standing also helps the provide habitat for insects and creatures. You can see still bark, oyster mushrooms growing on it. Bark fell off, different mushrooms, so it allows the different progression of decomposition happen naturally. If it's safely possible to leave it standing, that's great. Leaving on the ground helps as well. There's a formula how pileated woodpeckers, one of the biggest woodpeckers that we have. If there's enough dead wood standing and laying on the ground, that allows them to nest in the area. And as we do it, they started nesting here, and they come to the woods and feed on the wood. And sometimes it looks like somebody's been hacking with the axe. There's so much activity from them. This is not the best way to do hugelkultur, and I learned that the hard way. I heard from other gardeners, they tried, and next thing they had rats nesting in there. So there is a better way of doing it, and so that's not the bought because air pockets and plants drying out the plant later. So this one didn't, not that great. That one was much better, and different versions of it. It's a lot of fun. And micro hugels for specific purpose here, just trying to restore the forest floor and get things going, establish their footprints. And the effects are mostly good. And like I said, beetles can live there. And so giving nature half a chance, it would persist quite a few places. This is in a shade that's a native Heuchera villosa, a Sarum europaeum in my yard. And so life would find a way. This is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Przemek. That's fantastic. Do you want to come out of screen share?
Yeah.
Thank you.
There you go.
Great, thank you. Interesting. Yeah, particularly that last bit about the micro-hugel culture.
Yeah, isn't that? Well, it's such a good way with dealing with planting under trees too, isn't it? It's fantastic.
Right. So I didn't want to do this. I called it the disturbed woodland. So the pretty heavy soil. So starting plants at that level. That way I could tweak it, give them a little leg up, and then so some of the plants could establish then and then start creeping out or seeding in. But and this is on the slope, and so quite a gentle slope, but the water needs to drain through there. So doing them in the small pockets, the water could still move through it without. The little hugels could maybe slow it down a little bit, but I'm not changing the conditions for the existing trees too much, and so that's successful.
Yeah, no, that's great. I know there was one question from Hannah, and actually I had exactly the same question. The Tulipa clusiana, presumably, is that flowering when the leaves are not on the trees?
Right. Yes. It's a very early bloomer, and where the first case study has showed that was kind of a high shade, so not terribly dark, but yes, it's full sun. It's definitely better, but in there between the trees being not leafed out yet and being the high shade, it's
so almost on the woodland edge, really. Woodland edge.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And also the Datisca, I always associated with full sun, but
so we were looking through Datisca into the shady part, but yes, that was on that. Again,
yeah. Okay. And I was also really surprised about the Euonymus elatus being such a beast over there.
It is, yes.
Really.
It's for some reason, it's like Norway maple, which is obviously native to most of Europe. It's one of the worst invasives because it seeds in, and then the seedlings shade out the forest floor and basically everything out. Euonymus elatus, it produces so much seeds, and it's so successful in seeding in. So you see, house on the edge of the woods, and it's just like you blew them into the woods.
Wow.
Down the hill into the woods, and they smother everything. The deer doesn't eat it. So it's a menace.
Oh, okay. Also, Hannah's got another question. What was the species name of the shade salvia? I think you said that was a native salvia.
Salvia lyrata.
Lyrata.
Like a lyre, the instrument.
Oh, Lyr. Is it Lyrata? Lyrata.
And like I said, it will go from full shade, and it will naturally show up here in the woods.
Yeah.
Part shade, and then all the way to full sun. And the more light it gets, the color gets more saturated, but it still has the leaves have a little veins in them, very hence the rosettes.
Yeah.
And there's also a purple cultivar, which I'm not that partial. I'd rather have.
Yeah. That's good.
I think you mentioned a valeriana, which I couldn't remember the name of.
Valeriana pauciflora.
Pauciflora, yeah. I've tried to find that here to grow it here in woodland, and it's really hard to find because it's so beautiful.
It's hard to find it here too. There's very few nurseries that have it. And give it to everybody now because I get enough that it's actually very easy to propagate because each plant produces another, I don't know, 5, 7 every spring.
Yeah.
Usually I dig them out in the fall, and I think
Yeah.
it's also possible from cuttings. So I've seen it in the wild in a couple places, and I know only maybe of 2 nurseries that sell it here in the US. There's quite a few specialty nurseries. In Europe, it's easy. You can move live plants. Across the ocean, not as easy. So
in Europe, it might be easy, but of course, we've been cast away from Europe.
So
we are, you know,
cast aside.
I know. Mainland Europe.
I know. So
what was also really nice, Przemek, is to see chanticleer out of season, or very early season before the gardens are open. And I've never been there in spring. It's the one season I haven't been there, and it's really lovely to see, you know, those little jewels in that woodland. Yeah, really.
Yeah, they're just coming up.
What a treat! What a treat! Oh,
yes.
Yeah, I don't think we've got any more questions. Does anybody have any burning questions? I don't think we've got any more that have come in. I don't think I've got any more. I think those were the ones that I'd. I love that Selene, the Selene stellata. That's really nice.
Yes, and and it's like people's like, why is it not used more? So
I know.
It's and most of what I have, I bought it at some point, again from like 1 or 2 nurseries, and then I just collect seeds and propagate it because it is very nice.
How long does it flower for roughly? Is it quite short?
It actually flowers for a very long time. I would say at least a month because they open and close. So the same flowers last for quite a while, and then there's a sequence of the bloom as well. So
right.
Yeah, that's a nice feature too. The blooms for plus the foliage is very interesting. More than a lot of the other Selenes being in the whorls of 4.
Yeah. I particularly like the Selene fimbriata with the lovely little frilly, but it flowers for such a short period of time here, and
it's shorter too, right?
Yeah.
This one is too.
It's quite wiry, lovely.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow,
is it reasonably long lived, or not? Because a lot of Selenes seem to be quite short.
No, that one actually it's quite at least several years, like 5 or more. So they last quite a bit. They will self-sow a little bit. I rather help them sow more.
Yeah, that's great. A couple of thank yous. One from Hannah saying, great, thank you. She's off to do some research on hugel culture. And Leslie saying, thank you for the very interesting presentation. I was looking for ideas for my large garden with a few very large French oaks where I live in northern France. And she says your images are beautiful. So
Anemone Apennina for the spring.
Okay. And Deborah's saying, thank you for the wonderful webinar about shade gardening in the beautiful Chanticleer garden. Well, it certainly is, Deborah, and I know you've been there a few times, I think.
Fabulous. That's great.
Yeah. Okay. No, lots of thank yous coming in. So Przemek, thank you again for doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We know how busy it is there, and good luck with the opening next week. And I hope that frost doesn't cause too much problem.
So because the magnolias are just gorgeous right now, and the cherries still too.
Yeah. Okay, well, listen, give my love to everybody, and I'd be looking forward to seeing you in the summer.
Thank you very much.
Okay, all right. Thanks very much. Take care. Bye.
Do widzenia.